asking, where are these people? It's 1:15 noon. I had some technical difficulties, so for which I apologize. And it's kind of funny because I was, going to talk with the tech CEO and my computer crashed. So welcome, Amanda. It's so great to see you today. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to answer questions and tell you about Braid and hear a little bit more about sort of how you think this might fit into the work y'all are doing.
Awesome. So just some background. I am a host of a fundraiser community called the Donor Participation Project. We've been super active over the last year, a lot of it here on LinkedIn, but also in kind of Zoom meetings. And we talk a lot about topics that are related to innovation. Lots of folks are talking about things like crypto-philanthropy and NFTs and DAOs. But honestly, when you get right down to it, there's not a lot of adoption. So when we're looking at nonprofits and who are, kind of in the day-to-day, talking with donors, you tell somebody about technology things and they're like, what, So this was exciting to connect with you and to discover Braid, because it seems like a very rooted, kind of product, but that is at the same time. So we're eager to learn about your company, Amanda, and I'll let you take it from there. Introduce yourself a little bit better. Please feel free to do so.
Sure. Yeah. So my name is Amanda Payton. I am based in the Bay Area. I've worked in startups and technology for basically my entire career, working in apps and e-commerce and for big tech companies and small tech companies, and just really love the process of building new software and making something that people are excited and delighted to use. And I've built a lot of software that has definitely not fit that description, and so it's really cool to see something I think that's getting some traction and that people are really starting to kind of understand and get behind. And the origin of the Braid story, and I'm sure a lot of people on this call are like this. I've been a money collector my whole life for, fill in the blank, right? So even in high school, I was the treasurer of my class, or in any apartment I've ever lived in, I managed the money, just anything that was like, oh, we're working on like a little dance performance for our town, right? Like I would manage the money for that. And so I've always, anything from how do I collect from people? How do I manage it with others? How do I, be transparent about how the money is being spent so people don't think that I'm stealing it, even though they probably do think I'm stealing it anyway, but would never say it to me. You know what I mean? So those sorts of things. And they really sort of, I think, coalesced around this kind of light bulb moment, which is that when you think about financial products, just at the base level, right? Checking, savings, CDs, they're basically built for two buckets. Bucket one is individuals, and bucket two is businesses. And so, when you look at this third space, this third category of kind of shared financial products and products that aren't necessarily for businesses or individuals, all of a sudden you're like, oh, like the selection sucks, basically. Like there's just so much friction, having to sign up, like having to go to the bank. And it's like, it's 2022. Like it just shouldn't work like that. And so I've always really been into the ways that people share money and talk about money and that sort of thing. So that's kind of the origin of Braid.
And I see such a big use and a big moment for this, and we're seeing it ourselves in our community. We start wanting to do projects together, and we have exactly the same issues you were talking about. We want to do a project. I want to be transparent about our finances so people don't think that Lewis is going to buy a Ferrari. Off of that. So I'd rather kind of have a place where everybody can have visibility, where everybody can have a say. And I see so many use cases. It's almost like going back to the roots of what philanthropy was, which is, people getting together to do something in their community,
Yes. And we see that a lot, right? Where people ask us a lot, well, what's the main use case for Braid? Like, what's the one? And it's like, no, there's hundreds, right? We've got firefighters who use Braid to manage the money for their firehouse when they're like cooking meals together. We have these two guys in Montana who, during the pandemic, they started making homemade pasta that they would sell on Wednesdays and Sundays. And, now it's really grown into much more of a business, but it kind of started out as a project. Studio spaces, people pooling money for travel. If you think about like the reputation of the savings account in general, it's very sad, right? It's like, oh, you need savings for emergencies, you need savings for when things go bad. But how about like, hey, we're going to do a parade float together in 6 months and we want it to be amazing. And so let's just start putting in, $20 a week or whatever it is. And so I think just thinking about like, how do we build a tool where you look at it and you see you in it. And I think that that's a lot of how we think about it, is that, there's no age or geographic specific demographic. It's much more around showing you how you can use this tool for what you want.
This is amazing. So I'm eager to dive into your presentation, Amanda. I'm going to put it on the screen. And I'll take myself off the screen, and we'll all be
wonderful. Yeah. So the presentation is really designed as a kind of quick 5 to 10 minute overview of what is Braid, how does it work, and I talked a little bit about this idea that financial accounts have been designed for individuals and businesses, and so we really think of ourselves as a financial account for a community. And community can mean anything. It can mean two people. It can mean a bunch of musicians. It can mean two people starting a magazine. It can be a couple, a family. Like we take a very, very, very wide definition of it. We spent a couple of years building, like I would say, pretty kind of messy, hardcore financial infrastructure to basically boil this money pool down to a single link. And so I used the community book drive example because I spent 18, trying to write a novel. And, so I think thinking about writing retreats and the whole world of writers and, things like that. But, really these links, I think, can work for anything. And so you have a link for your money pool and you send it around, right? And so you can send it and say, okay, we're trying to collect $1,000, $5,000, whatever it is. And anyone who wants to contribute can use a debit card or a credit card. So the interesting thing here is that you can really sort of segment who's managing the money versus who is contributing. And there's a lot of fluidity there. So, what you mentioned about wanting to have transparency about how your money is spent, what we've learned over the few years we've been working on this is that only some people care about that. The others are like, I'd rather just contribute and like, I trust you. And so this ability to sort of add people into the pool as you need them or want them and managing the money together is a big part of the product. So the other difference between Braid and a lot of other products out there is that, there's a lot of fundraising platforms. Like there's a lot of places where you can go and you can create, a fundraising page and collect money, right? But the issue is that money has to go somewhere. Like it's got to go to your personal bank account or your nonprofit bank account or whatever it is. And so the key for us was designing something that stays inside of our ecosystem. So this is, and you can use it for anything, right? And so let's say you were going to do a book drive, to have a place where people can contribute, where they can manage the money and where you can spend on expenses, just sort of manage the book drive end to end, and then, walk away when you're done, I think was something that we found was very, very compelling to people. And so as you think about all of the different ways that Braid can be used, here are just 3 of what we're seeing. So the first is rotational savings, this idea that people get together and, in groups of 10 people or so, and they put in, however much they can, right? $20 a week, $100 a week, and then they save together and disperse funds in a rotation. So we're actually working with care.org on this, on sort of getting together rotational savings communities. In I think right now it's in 3 cities, but we wanted expand it to a nationwide project. The second one is community projects. So just this idea of, hey, we're doing a trash cleanup, every Saturday for the next 2 months, and we want to have a pool for expenses related to that, right? So anything you can think of on the project side. And then finally, challenges and fundraisers. And so this idea of, we get a lot of gift pools, or we're going to come together as a community. This person is just got their PhD and we want to send them off, with a fund to start their new life, right? Like that sort of thing, is very prevalent on the platform as well. And so what's been really interesting and what we've seen is that we have this way that we've been driving awareness, which is, someone signs up and they will start a pool, and then they'll send the link around, and other people who are contributing say, wow, I also need a pool. And then, it will sort of spread from there. And so I think that's something where, it helps us to get a lot of exposure just from sending these links, using these links, that sort of thing. So we are based in San Francisco. We've raised money. We've raised some venture capital money, but I think the biggest thing for us is really thinking about how, when Venmo and Cash App came out in the early 2010s, it was this really like, wow, this product just feels so different. And I think that for us, we see the same thing where you should be able to do, obviously within the bounds of the law, you should be able to do whatever you want with a money pool. So if you want one, for your extracurricular activities, right? Your karate club, or your side project, or your house, or you're saving up for something, like the idea that Braid should be top of mind there. That's really where we hope to get over the next few years. So I hope that helps as a sort of quick introduction. But I always find that with this sort of thing, it's the Q&A is always the best. So I wanted to make sure to leave a bunch of time for Q&A.
This is great, Amanda. Thank you so much. So as I mentioned, when we emailed back and forth, my head was kind of exploding with kind of parallelisms, like, and everybody who's here listening, if you kind of think that would be kind of cool to use at my nonprofit, but I just wonder about the mechanics, just chat it in, and Amanda here will try to answer.
Yeah, and I can talk a little bit about just quick mechanics of sign up. So basically, you sign up, you create an account. We do have to verify your identity. And, it works sort of like a multi-user account, right? So you can add people, you can assign permissions. You can say, oh, we're going to have 10 people in our pool, but only 2 of them can spend. So that sort of thing. But the app is designed to hopefully take, 2 minutes to sign up and create a pool.
Yeah. So Amanda, like something that happens in lots of nonprofits, okay? And that's kind of, the big trend is why we started the donor participation project, which was there are less and less people giving to nonprofits in general. And, that kind of comes from not being so engaged, et cetera. But something that we do hear a lot is like, I want to have a say in like what my money is going to do. Or, that feeling of kind of more like the crowdfunding feeling, or I want to give directly to this PhD student that you just mentioned. That's increasingly interesting to nonprofits. So, something I wonder is, on the flip side, if you try to do anything like that inside a nonprofit, it's, hell on earth, the financials, it's just going to be so difficult, right? So something I wonder is if there's a possibility there to, there is some overlap there. Do you work with organizations in any way, or is this kind of mostly an individual for individuals?
So we primarily work with individuals. It just depends on the setup of kind of the project that you're trying to work on, right? So for example, with the care.org project, they are basically bringing together groups of 10 people in various cities across the country to do these rotational savings groups. And so the people who are signing up for Braid are actually the 10 people in the rotational savings group. Whereas, for like onboarding an organization, we would have to do a different verification process. So right now, like the product is rooted in individuals, but what we also see are people who, 3 or 4 people from the same organization will sign up and we'll create a pool for, one-off projects, that sort of thing. And down the line, I think we really want to be able to support nonprofits as well.
That's so interesting. So let me read Heather's comment.
Yeah.
So she's asking if she joins a circle via Braid, which was kind of the goal of today. So maybe you have, at least one new user. Does it connect to my bank account? And can I set up a recurring contribution? Say join together with friends and everybody gives $50 per month, which gets deducted from my bank account.
So that's a very common use case of Braid. And it's something where people will create, I'm doing a travel savings, or we have these like big co-ops that do their food funds through Braid. So they'll set it's $100 a month, and then we all kind of share food and eat together. And so what I would say is what you can do today is you set up the pool, you can invite 4 people, you can say we're going to do $50 a month. And right now, it's funny, we're actually making a big technical change where it used to send you these reminders that were like, okay, now it's time to contribute, but we're moving to fully automated transactions. And so you can say, all right, I'm putting in $50. I want it once a month on the 10th, and then that's it. And you set it and forget it. So I guess the answer to your question is yes. Like the way that you've laid it out is exactly how it works.
Okay, and Amanda, who owns the Braid account, or does that concept even mean anything?
Yeah, well, of course, I mean, it's money. So, it was one of those things where we had a lot of expensive lawyers, like the really philosophical lawyers, that we worked with at the beginning to kind of work through this with us. And the way that we think about it is basically the ownership in the account is pro rata to what you put in. So let's say, for example, if we were doing this this savings that Heather lays out, and maybe one person's putting in $50 and then 2 people are putting in $25, right? And then there's like a blow up in the friend group and they're like, forget it, we're not doing this anymore. Then you would say, okay, based on the terms of service, that like it would be divided up based on who put in what. I will say though that one of my biggest learnings from all of this is the social pressure and the social dynamics of sharing money together. Like I thought we were going to get 1,000 support tickets about this, and it just doesn't really happen because, first of all, if someone steals the money, like, yes, you get a little money, but you lose your friends forever. Like you just, it is like ultimate social consequence. And then I think the other thing is that like there's so much transparency, and that creates so much security that's not technical security. It's like socially based security. And so that has been fascinating to me, because I was like, oh, this is going to be such a huge problem. We need like a bulletproof legal policy on this. And then it's like, or we could just lean on the fact that like, social norms are so entrenched that they're doing a lot of the work for us.
Well, that's our world, Amanda. A lot of the fundraising we do is just social norms, things like that. That really relates. So tell us about some of the kind of community-based, nonprofit type use cases, some of the stories.
Yeah, sure. So, I think what we see in communities is very much, and it's a new product. And so whenever you have a new product, people generally will start small, right? And so they'll start with a sort of like a bake sale, or a one-off event, or a science fair, or raising money for someone in the community who's ill, right? Things like that. And I think that we also get stuff that's a lot more mundane than GoFundMe. And so, if you think about the role of GoFundMe, it's very much, it has to be this like deep story with photos and like a lot
shiny project.
Yes. Whereas this is like, oh, we're renting AV equipment for our community meeting, right? And so it's these sort of mundane, unsexy kind of expenses. But those are streamlining that process is almost more appealing to people, because otherwise you have like one person who's paying for this and waiting 5 months to get paid back for like the van rental or whatever it is. We had a group during the pandemic called Food with Fam, which was doing basically grocery delivery to people in their community. And so they would collect money from like kind of various places, but then they were using Braid as like the central command to say, okay, here's where we're renting the refrigerated truck, we're getting the groceries, that sort of thing. And so I would say that like we get a lot of like very mundane expenses, but at the same time, it serves as this kind of like central place for where all of that can live, versus like, I know there's always someone with a spreadsheet, right? And so it's kind of like, instead of that spreadsheet and trying to get the correct amounts in and this and that, you can just say, look, we have a $500 budget for this event that we're putting together. And we can just use this as a sort of central place for that.
Yeah, that your comment about the mundane really resonates. Somebody was asking me the other day, what types of communications work to build communities? And I was telling them it's nothing that you'd put in your portfolio. So like if you're looking for anything flashy, it's like photos of dogs and trains and,
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of what brings people together. Amanda, do you find that people outgrow Braid? So you mentioned a couple of projects that really exploded. Do they kind of, how do people manage all of that? It just, feels complicated.
Yeah, I would say that, I don't think we've been around long enough to really see people kind of like age out of it. The other thing is a lot of our team comes from Etsy. So we all, about half of us used to work together at Etsy. And this is something we would see at Etsy all the time. Like, oh, I'm selling candles to West Elm now. Like, am I really like a, handmade seller? And the truth is, I think that like people, maybe they add on other tools, but we haven't really seen people outgrow it necessarily. I think it's more of, so for example, we have, this woman who's ex-military, and she's running this very, very strict rotational savings program. And there's probably 90 people in in her group. And it's all like, $5 on this day, $10 on this day. It's not like huge amounts, but it's very, very disciplined. And so I think what we found is that we actually can accommodate large dollar amounts, large groups, that sort of thing. And I think really the only reason for people to move away is, if they want like the sort of legal umbrella of having like a true nonprofit bank account, which I would argue there's so many community projects and community initiatives where that's just not necessary.
Exactly. It's so let's so I'm going to open an account as soon as we hang up. Amanda, you
I love it.
Let me just kind of maybe this helps other people kind of think through an actual example. And if you have one that you'd like to put in the chat, please do, for everybody that's out there. But we're organizing a gaming tournament. Which is going for fundraisers, to kind of teach fundraisers how to work with gaming and with all this whole new world.
Yeah.
So and I was kind of thinking, we have a group of people, we get together. Would that be a good project for a Braid?
Yeah, so I'm going to pull one up. I actually just saw this yesterday, and I think I can share my screen, maybe. Can you see this?
Let me put it up. This is great. And everybody, this is totally impromptu. Amanda is absolutely great. Thank you.
Okay, so this is, I guess, a group called Brooklyn-based Board Gaming, 1-year anniversary, and they're having a party, and they're going to collect some money and, have some food at dessert, and that's it. And so, I think that there's definitely, as you start to discover these use cases, there's just so many of them. that it's like, oh yeah, I can just I'll make a link. Like and that was, I think that was like a big kind of unlock for us is this idea of like anything that you're, thinking about doing, how about the link, right? Like that's the sort of like, that's the thing is like, oh, okay, our gaming thing. Oh, let's make a link for that. Oh, we're doing a ocean cleanup, right? Okay, let's do a link for that. And it just kind of like snowballs. And what you see is people, once they make one, they just keep making them because they're like, oh, this made my life so much easier. And the reason is, and I think this is like a core sort of thing for me as well, is I did not like mixing in other people's money with like my personal bank accounts, right? So like my Venmo or my, checking account or whatever it was, because I was like, this money is not mine. Like I don't own this. This is like belongs to this group, and yeah, I'm collecting it. But it just always felt weird. And so this idea of like, oh, here's just this dedicated place for your game night, right? It's kind of a weird thing to think about. It's not, it's not like cool crypto, whatever. It's literally, it's just like, here's basically a digital envelope with a link that you can use.
That sounds so much more practical than the governance whizzy-magiggies of, the DAO world.
Yeah.
What about taxes, Amanda? I guess, I don't know. Is there any, what do people need to, do people ask you about that? Like money comes into that and it's an account? I don't know.
They do ask us about it. I mean, I would say where taxes come into play are, we have a lot of people who use Braid as basically a sort of central command for like projects, small businesses, all of that, right? So people who have 3 rental apartments and they rent out cars on Turo, and they're just like doing all sorts of like different types of projects. And so for that, like they will use Braid to sort of segment all of it, but then they work with an accountant, to kind of help them work through that. In terms of like these one-offs, I think that this is taxes don't really come into play in the same way, like they don't really come into play for Venmo. And so what I would say about taxes is that it's really a spectrum for us. And we only see, people who are asking questions who are spending, tens of thousands of dollars a month through the system, which is like, again, to come back to this idea of like these mundane expenses, this is much a tool for, collecting $200 on a Friday night as it is for, running a $25,000 a month, various kind of side project operation.
Awesome. And we're going to get to Heather's question in a sec, but for instance, for our little project, and we need to talk about your promotion. So that's going to be exciting for people. But for our little project, we may get money. So from people's work, like they pay for, because it's like a course. So can Braid accept credit card payments from businesses and such?
Yeah. Yep. So it's like the way that the payment links work is like any credit card payment. So like you can put in your business card, you can put in the place I think where we can't support is having the business be the owner of the pool. So that's sort of that, but if someone uses a business card to fund the pool, it's totally fine. It's more of like, putting, into it as like the pool owner. That requires a sort of different level of regulation.
It's that ownership part, that shared ownership part. I think that your product is so cool, and the fact that you figured it out, the mechanics, is Herculean. I mean, I don't know how you did it. Heather Thompson. So she's thinking, okay, Amanda, we're fundraisers, we do events.
Yep.
Okay. When we have an event that we're using to like cultivate relationships with people, we call it a cultivation event. We're not actually cultivating like plants or anything. But then like she's thinking that could be, instead of, going there and telling everybody, go to our nonprofit's webpage, it might give like the whole thing a bit of oomph if you have people share the Braid link and then they pool their money and then they say, wow, this is what we did together.
Yes. Absolutely. And that's something that, we've been seeing a lot of, which is like one person will create this link, and then all of a sudden you see all these contributions come in, and it's really cool. It's really cool to see, because they go from, you know, some of these pools have been around for years, and some will be around for like a day, right? So imagine, I mean, this is sort of a dark example, but like someone's like husband suddenly died, and we saw the link go out, and then all of a sudden this money came in, and then they purchased a DoorDash gift certificate for this person, right? And so you have these sort of quick loops. Oh, I just saw, does everyone see how much everyone else gives? So the answer is mostly no. If you use the link, you contribute, you know, what you want, and you don't see what everyone else is giving. And I think that was done on purpose, mostly because we talked to a lot of schools early on. I think there's a lot of kind of educational use cases here, and there was some pushback around, well, you know, not every parent like can give $50 or $100 for school supplies, and we don't want to like discourage them from giving. And so we make it so that the only people who can see what everyone has given are the ones who are managing the pool. So if you have 10 people and they're all managing the pool, they can all see what everybody gave. But if you're just sharing the link, we don't share the balance, we don't share who gave what. But it's something we're thinking about in the future. And I think it's something we go back and forth about all the time.
So in our world, sometimes that is helpful, and maybe, you know, with like being able to have different levels to what is shared, but it is helpful to see, like, you know, there are 50 other people, that kind of the GoFundMe thing where you see that list.
Totally. And you know, I think that is something, what we're really interested in is adding like toggles and defaults. So for example, we have the South Bay Pathology Society, right? It's like literally a bunch of pathologists in the South Bay in California. And, you know, when they came to us, they said, look, like our membership is $300 a year. So we need you to put a fixed contribution amount. Like, we don't want people paying $100. We want, like, that's the amount. And so, you know, you can think about how down the line, there's all of these different ways to customize, right? So you can say, like, I want you to show the number of people who've contributed. I want you to show the total amount that's contributed, and basically making it almost like, I mean, I don't know if I'm going to date myself, but I don't know if you remember like MySpace pages and how it was always just like, you could really, really customize it in the way that you wanted to. And
all that glitter.
Yes, exactly. And so this idea of, you know, okay, we're doing the trash cleanup. We're collecting $20 from everyone. We don't need to, like, you know, really like sort of jazz up the page. It's literally just the link and getting the money in, versus something that's more of like, we are doing a collective giving experiment, and we want to show the number of people. We want to show, you know, how much has been collected. I think those are things that we can really allow you to customize over time.
That is so cool. Heather, who's a wonderful member of our community. So she kind of agrees with defaulting to the privacy friendly mode, but, you know, also would be helpful to show more things. So Amanda, you have a really exciting promotion going on, I understand, that might interest some people here.
Which promotion?
The $1,000 per week to, if you have, did that end? It may have ended.
So the Back by Braid is over, sadly. It's something, I know it's something that we want to bring it back. We want to bring it back because it was so successful when we did it. But I think when we bring it back, we're going to go much bigger with it, because we got you know, podcasts and community groups and just all sorts of things. And so that's on pause for now, but we hope to bring it back in the fall, because it was just such a
oh my goodness. So folks, follow Braid. Make sure you get it. Where, Amanda, my last question, where do people, so you have the financial kind of community piece. Where do you find that people are building their communities? Are there any, like, or is it kind of all over the place, you know, anywhere you do in real life? Facebook?
So it's really everywhere. I mean, we get people who are posting links in email lists, on Discords and group chats. It's just, and I think you said this in your email, but there are just so many places to organize in a non-financial way, right? And so the way that we sort of get tipped off about that is people will put in the description field, like, see our Facebook group for details, or, as discussed in Slack or whatever. And it's funny because we do have like a small messaging component in the app. And I think we're probably just going to cut it because the world doesn't need another communication channel. What I think we really need is like a really, really reliable way to pool money. And so that's, that's our sort of like North Star.
You have such an amazing story, Amanda. Thanks so much for joining today. What's your website? Where can people sign up? And, should they connect with you? And if so, where, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah. So my email is just Amanda Payton, AP@braid.co. And then the website is braid.co. You can download the app. Would love to hear any feedback. Also, if you need help walking through something or you're not sure how to set it up, please reach out. We're always interested in hearing from people. Oh, it's braid.co, AP@braid.co.
Folks, never get that wrong. Okay, let's fix it before we leave. And I'm just going to thank you again. So cool. And it's, there's so much innovation in this space, and it seems like it was kind of overdue. So we're very grateful for what you're doing.
And what I would say is, like, look, I think if you're curious, the best way to experience the app is just to download it and make a pool and, send it around. And worst case, you've got, $6 in a pool, and you can do something fun with it. So
take over the world from there.
Yes, exactly.
Awesome. Have a great morning. Thanks a bunch, Amanda.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.